With the help of Hashem, we are learning Moed Katan Daf Chaf. We are dedicating this class Le'ilui Nishmas, Sepoira Bas Arya Halevi. May your neshama have an Aliyah, and our heart goes out to our Chaver Tzvika. May you and your family only have many happy occasions, amen, going forward. So, Chevra, we left off on Daf Chaf Amid Aleph. We are 8 lines from the top of the Amid. We began the sugya that questioned whether Shloishim can start prior to Shiva. What was the case? That if there is a passing over Yom Tiv, there, it's not that the Yom Tiv will cancel the Shiva because it didn't even start yet. What will happen is that the Shiva is going to be delayed. So the person will only start sitting Shiva after Yom Tiv. However, question is, could you already use the days of Yom Tiv to start counting down off the Shloishim? To which Rabbah, there's a machlekes in Girsais, we have either Rabbah or Rabbah, we're going to go with Rabbah, responded that Shloishim cannot start before the Shiva. So you begin counting the Shiva right after Yom Tiv. Shloishim also will begin right after Yom Tiv, and we're going to continue. Actually, we're going to refute that opinion. Now, what we will have is we're going to introduce on Daf Chav the opinion ultimately coming from Beis Hillel, unlike what we learned yesterday in the Mishnah and what we learned yesterday in the Braisa that says that Yom Tiv only cancels Shiva. If you had 3-day Shiva prior to Yom Tiv, Beis Hillel holds, and so we paskin that even if Shiva only just begun, the burial was mamash erev Yom Tiv, as long as something was done to express the fact that we are in Shiva. It's not just about what you're not doing, it's about something that you are doing, as we'll see. So then the Shiva began. Regel will also cancel it. We're going to have the big question, Minayin la'avelus Shiva. How do you know that there's avelus? We're going to have a quote in the Gemara. We're going to, God willing, learn inside Tosfos that quotes the Yerushalmi that we spoke on in the beginning of the Perek. Why are we searching to find the pasuk? In Negea Yaakov Avinu, the Torah writes explicitly that they mourned for him for 7 days. Now, truth be told, the mourning that we read about on Parshas Vayechi happened before the burial. But the Yerushalmi responds that we don't learn from that Avelo Shiva because of the big rule of Ein Lemedim Mikoidim Matan Torah. Even though there are mitzvahs that we link historically, they are connected to before Matan Torah. Just for example, Bris Milah. We even say now by the bracha, L'hachnisoi b'vrisa shel Avraham Avinu. But why does a Yid do a bris? Because God commanded us on Har Sinai that Ubayom Hashmini Yimoil. With the knowledge that this already began, Hashem also gave that commandment to Avraham Avinu. In other words, since the only sources in the Torah is prior to Matan Torah, we also quoted that we have, according to Chumash Rashi, that the Mabul began, so to say, 7 days after the original date, because Hashem wanted to allow us to mourn the Shiva for Misu Shelach. That's also Ein Lamedim Mikoidim Matan Torah. We're going to introduce the concept of Shmuar Keroiva versus Shmuar Rechoika. Shmuar Rechoika means a delayed report. The communication that we have now never existed up until now. So if there's a passing, but the person only found out that there was a passing at a delayed date. We'll see a delayed date means more than 30 days after the passing. So we're going to see how does that person practice the laws, if they practice the laws, and we will actually paskin that they practice the laws of Shiva for 1 day. We will actually see that here we will say, Mixas Hayoim Kekuloi. I know we spoke out yesterday or 2 days ago, the shitas that hold that you never say Mixas Hayoim Kekuloi when there is only a 1-day mitzvah, like for Shabbos. But we will apply this only for Mixas Hayoim, and there isn't Shloishim. There's just 1 moment of mourning versus if a person has a Shmuar Keroiva, if you have a current report means it's not after 30 days from the passing. So from when the person found out, they count Shiva and they count the Shloishim. Gewaldig. Even though that means that they're going to conclude their Shiva and Shloishim way after other family members that found out earlier, not a contradiction. You found out within, it's not called Yeter Chayka. You keep the proper Shiva and Shloshim. We're going to learn in today's daf, for whom do we mourn? We're going to see that there are those relatives that are considered biblical relatives. Now, this is connected but not bound with is the dinim of Avelos Midorais or Midrabanan. Even if you're going to say that the dinim of Avelos are purely Midrabanan, but Aninus is Midoiraisa. For whom do we have to have mourning? So we're going to learn Midoiraisa, 7 relatives. And then we're going to have many added relatives, Midrabanan. And then we're going to have the question, there's a concept called mourning for Shniyim. Shniya means, let's say that a person is mourning for his, is mechoyev to mourn for his mother, but his mother is alive. But one of the mother's 7 close relatives passed away. Question is someone obligated to mourn if one's immediate relatives are mourning because one of their immediate relatives passed away? So either they are going to be midrabanan mechoyev to mourn, or we will mourn in their presence, and then we will explain why halachically nowadays this is not practiced at all. If we'll have time, we'll begin the topic of kriya, that kriya, renting the garments, is something that dafka needs to be done while standing, and we're going to look for sources for that halacha. Without any further ado, Chevra, daf chaf, again, daf chaf, amud aleph, 8 lines from the top of the amud, last word in the line, esvei. The question again, the Rabbah opined that shloshim cannot start before Shiva, and we had one brayso that spoke explicitly about a passing on Yom Tiv. That brayso actually had 2 cases. The latter case was when the passing was on Yom Tiv, and we said that even though the brayso clearly says that the Yom Tiv is counted towards the shloshim, but that wasn't in the case where the passing was on Yom Tiv, because the brayso had 2 cases, and now esvei, this will be a brayso that will refute Shitas Rabbah. It says in a brayso clearly, regel oilo loilo minyan shloshim, that the regel, the Yom Tiv, is counted for the shloshim. It's even though you're not practicing any laws of mourning, or that we spoke at a machlokes rishonim, or most of the laws of mourning of Shiva are not practiced during the regel, but like we said yesterday, the halachas of shloshim are practiced by default by every year during the regel, right? No one takes a haircut during Yom Tiv. That includes Chol HaMoed, right? The same thing should be theoretically when it comes to nail cutting. Then we have the dinim of we're not allowed to launder clothing on Yom Tiv, nor can we launder clothing even on Chol HaMoed. No, it's the main laws of shloshim, that which we must abstain from, is anyways happening. So the brayso says it counts down ketzad, and the brayso only gives 1 case. The case is that there was a passing on Yom Tiv. Kevoroi b'tchilas regel, the burial was on Yom Tiv. When it comes to Shiva, as we learned yesterday, Mayna Shiva achar regel, then the immediate family members sit the full 7 days after Yom Tiv. Or the Shiva is only delayed, but it's not canceled. However, mitzat sheni, since there are certain laws that according to Rashi and according to other Rishonim, they keep over Yom Tiv. And as we mentioned, people are also menachem, these avelim, over Yom Tiv. So there's certain hetedim that we afford them when they only began the Shiva after Yom Tiv. One heted, one leniency is umalachto nasis alidei achedim. When it comes to a mourner, if there is no financial loss, even others cannot do work for their behalf. Over here, since really on Yom Tov they already didn't work, nor did anyone work for their behalf during Yom Tov. I know it wasn't counted down to Shiva, but since it's already beyond the normal Shiva, so now if the passing was on the first, passing and burial was on the first day of Yom Tov, which means that when Yom Tov ends, they already were 7 days after the burial, then during the whole Shiva, other people can do work for them. That's a heter. Because not only can other people do work for them outside their home, but their own avadim and their own shevchaisav can even do work for them in their home. In all these, this is a heter that's only been afforded to them because really, over Yom Tov, right, if not for the law that the regel suspends, they were in Shiva. And again, according to many of the Rishonim, there were certain laws that they were keeping. Furthermore, the ein rabim misaskim boy, we teach misaskim boy means that the public doesn't go to be menachem avelim during the week after Yom Tov. Why? Because because that's something that they did over Yom Tov. Now, just to point out whether this was recorded on the Chabad.org camera or only on Zoom. So Danny pointed out, and I just want to reiterate clearly that this is not exactly the way we behave nowadays. That's not our minig nowadays. But it's not just that people over Yom Tov, as a nicety, would go over and offer them words of condolences. That if a person had someone, a relative, that was buried on Yom Tov, people would mamish go to the menachem avel. They would go to the house and they would be halachically menachem avel then. So that's why, since people were already menachem avel, the immediate relatives for 7 days, that's the case. So then during the next shiva, so to say, no one is going to be menachem avel then. Now, by the way, the same thing is if the passing was during Chol HaMoed. So that you just have to you deduct. So notice if they were 4 days in Yom Tov from the burial, okay, so then for the first 3 days, people will be menachem avel then. But in the subsequent days, they won't. And here we go. V'regel oiloloi. Now, the Braisa only gave one case. The case was there was a passing on Yom Tov. The Braisa writes explicitly that even though the Shiva will be practiced after Yom Tov, but Yom Tov will count towards the Shloshim. You begin counting down the Shloshim from the day of the burial. Clearly, Tiyufta, Agishlagen. Agishlagen, Rabbi didn't know the Braisa. And indeed, Kiyasa Ravin, when he came from the Holy Land to Babel, he quoted in the name of Rebbe Yochanan, same thing, Afilu, Kivaroi, Beregel, the Shloshim is counted down during the Regel, and V'chein Oidele Rabbi Elazar, so Paskant Rabbi Elazar to his son, Rabbi Pedas, Afilu, Kivaroi, Beregel, and here again, my friends, even though, I mean, even without the Tiyufta, this is a leniency, less Shloshim, automatically that's how we follow, aside of the fact that he was Agishlo. Okay, now, Tana Rabbanan. Kiyem kfiyas hamikdash shloisha yomim koydem haregel. Look at the example the Braisa gives. The Braisa begins quoting the same shita we had in the last daf, shita of the Mishnah, shita and the Braisas we had on daf Yutes, that when does regel cancel? Only if there was 3 days of Shiva. Now, when we speak about Shiva, so there are things that we don't do. Person, you don't go to work. That's not enough of practicing Shiva. That's a negative practice. As an example of something that we do is they used to turn over the beds. Now, there are many other things that we do. People sit on a low chair. People take off their shoes. The reason why the Braisa gives this as a mashal is because from all of the minhagim of positive things that people do, this is the most external to the person. When a person sits on the ground, that's avada, one practice of avelus. Person sat low. The bed in the house was overturned. I wasn't even there. The fact that one nihug of avelus was done 3 days prior, then is where we say ein tzarich lichpoisa achar regel. That is where the regel cancels it. In other words, and first of all, you have to have 3 days. Second of all, during those 3 days, you have to have for the 3 days nihug avelus. These are the words of Rabbi Eliezer, which is the sheet of our Mishnah. However, the Chachamim Moimrim, which is how we paskin, no, same concept. There has to be a nihug of avelus. You know what a nihug of avelus nowadays would be? Sometimes there was a burial erev yantiv. By the time the family comes home, it's yantiv. They tell them to take off their shoes, which is what we do right after the burial. They took off their shoes, ne'ilas asandal. That's a nihug avelus. They have to do something. Not only 1 day, even 1 moment in the day. Shah doesn't mean an hour. It means a period in the day. And now the Gemara says this machloikas tanoim originates from Beishamai and Beisilel. Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Rab Shimon, hein divrei Beishamai, hein divrei Beisilel. Now we discovered it that Beishamai are do oimrim, and that's gavaldik Rabbi Eliezer Shamute, right? That means also that Rabbi Eliezer, as you'll see, the great Rabbi Eliezer normally follows in the shita of Beishamai. Aside of it having another meaning that he was put into a ban, shloisha yamim, but ubeisilo loibnim amfilo yom echad. So now that we have a machlekes, Amar Afuna, Amar Abchia, Bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, or Amri La, that Amar, let's go with the Bach, Amar Le, Rabbi Yechanan, to Rabchia Bar Abba, and Rabchia Bar Abba told Rafuna, Afilo yom echad, Afilo shoachas. Okay, now Rava says halacha ketana didon the amar shloisha, right, which is an anomaly. In other words, Rava doesn't follow that which we always quote Shmuel halacha kedivrei hamekel, but we kedivrei hamekel. It says the Gemara like this: Ravina ikla l'sura de pras. I mean, Surah was the famous Surah. That was the headquarters of the Yeshiva of Rav. That's not the Surah. But whenever you have to give another clarification, so there was another Surah by the Euphrates, and Ravina traveled it. Amalei Rav Chavir Ravina. Hilchas Amai. Amalei, not like Shmuel, not like Rava, but like we heard from Eretz Yisrael, like the rule of Shmuel. Amalei afilu yom echad, afilu sha'achas. Says the Gemara. Yosef Rab Chia bar Abba and Rav Ami and Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. These three Amoraim were sitting Akila on the porch, on the entrance of the home of Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar. These three Amoraim are sitting together, says the Gemara, Nafik Milsa mi beinayu. The following halachic topic came up. Minayu laveil shiva. Answers the Gemara, Pasuk in Amos, when it says, Vafachti chagechem le'evel, even though it's a non-positive verse, like opposites. I'm turning one into the opposite, but it's amazing what Chazal do. But they're juxtaposed. They're juxtaposed. So we learn not from their dissimilarity. We learn from their similarity. By the way, one thing being on the other side of the coin of the other is a similarity in the opposite way. So what's the similarity? Just like Yom Tov Shiva, Af Avelu Shiva. Frek Toisves, what are you talking about? Don't we have a biblical Yom Tov of Shemoina? Of course we do. Right? Sukkot followed by Shmini Atzeres. So why don't we have 8 days? Answer Toisves. No. Shmini Atzeres is Regel Bifnei Atzmoi. Remember that? Psar Keshav. That's Gavaldik. I'm reading inside Toisves. 1, 2, 3, the fourth Toisves. I state vayas lo aviv evil shivas yomim. Why do you have to go krichin to Amos? You have a pasuk in Chamishachum Shetoira. It says the Gemara leimatzil asuye. First of all, Toisves answers because over there it was before the burial. So this is a extra legal shiva. This is not usual. Nowadays there's no shiva prior to the burial. There's a state of aninus. With theoretically with more chamur laws or different laws, but not shiva. However, or according the words of the Rambam, nitna Torah v'nischatcha halacha. That's a very big klal in halacha. Okay, and then Tosfos tells you that in Yerushalmi they found many psukim. Here in Bavli we have the pasuk in Amos. Now let's go back. The last narrow line. We're not done yet. So Tosfos explains why do we compare it to Shmini Atzeres? Make Shivan to 8. You know what? You know what we say normally? Tafasta meruba, loy tafasta, right? Tafasta meyuta, tafasta. So I have a good kasha on tafasta meyuta. There is one regel that's 1 day. Shavuos. Frek the Gemara ve'em Atzeres, the Chad Yoima. First wide line says the Gemara, yeah, good. Zog's good. You know the Zog's good? The Torah is juxtaposing Chag to Evil. How many days are Chag? Now that we said that Shmini Atzeres doesn't go together with the first 7 days. So it's either 7 days or 1 day. You have 2 options. You know what? By Avelus, you also have 2 options. There is an Avelus of 7, there is an Avelus of 1. So now compare one, use everything out. The Avelus of Shiva should go from the Yom Tov of Shiva, and then there is an Avelus of 1, which comes from the Chag of 1. And here we introduce the Amar Reish Lakish in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, Minayin Lishmua Rechoika, a delayed report. It was very common then. How much delayed we'll see in a moment. Delayed from the burial. You understand? Because Shiva begins by the burial, or delayed from the passing. We'll see. Oh, if you heard at a certain point so far away, you only keep 1 day. And 1 day doesn't mean 1 day Shiva and then Shloishim. There's no Shloishim. There is no Shloishim. And Nachadito, this 1 day isn't even a full day, as we'll see soon. Because it says, Mamish, since it says, so we have this Hekesh, amazing. So again, there's called Shmua Kereva. Either you're there, or you found out immediately, or within a short amount of time, we'll see against 30 days, then you have 7, then you have shloshim. So it works. You have shmor karev, shmor achayka. They don't have the same amount of time. They are all compared to a chag. Perfect.
If you heard it like 5 days late, so then you would keep a full 7 days plus the full.
So if you hear it's 5 days late, then you would keep from when you heard it 7 days and shloshim from when you heard. However, there's one however, and that we don't have time for now. It's going to be soon. I think it's at the end of Daf Chaf Aleph. That if you heard it, let's say within 5 days or within 4 days, and you came to your other siblings that are still sitting Shiva, there's a Havamina, we'll see, there's a Svarim that since you are finishing Shiva with them, then you take and get to conclude it with them. Amazing. Within 3 days, after 3 days, the eldest brother, a lot of nuance to that. Let's go right over here. Okay. Now, and the Ashkechanat said is the Ikra Chad Yoma, Chag, Nikuda, third white line, let's speak about this, the Shmor Karev, Shmor Achayka. Shmor Karev means a current, relatively current. You heard Kareva to the moment of death or to the moment of burial. So says the Braisa Nehega Shiva and Shloishim from the report. That's the point, Shuki. From the report means that it's going to come out that the mourners are not finishing at the same time. However, Shmua Rechoika, once it's called already a delayed, faraway report. What's called Kareva, what's called Rechoika? Opinion number 1, Rabbi Akiva. Kareva means within 30 days. Rechoika means after 30 days. Just to know, L'chayda 30 is included in Kareva. Not only is 30 included in Kareva, I want to say something like this. After the Shainim speak out. What we learned yesterday or 2 days ago, that some Amoyroim held that the Chachamim didn't even argue with Abba Shol when it comes to the Shloshim. If they argued, we paskin like Abba Shol. In other words, even if you're going to hold that on the Shiva, you have to have a full Shiva, by the Shloshim, mixas ayom kekuloi. Now, imagine, family, finish Shloshim, today's the 30th day. Because of the rule that mixas ayom kekuloi, after Shachris, they finish Shloshim. But it's still within 30 days. It's still the 30th day. Now another relative, an immediate relative, found out. He can't say, since all of my siblings are out of the laws of Shloshim, it's called Rechoika. No. It's only if this person heard it after 30 days. We're good?
It started 7 days of Shiva right there.
He starts 7 days of Shiva. He can't say it's called a Rechoika because my family finished the Shloshim. They finished the Shloshim because Mitzvah Yom Kekula, you don't get to use it for this. Now, the Chachamim Oimrim, Achashmua Kareva, Achashmua Rechoika, they disagree with this whole concept. So I don't care when you heard, you were always Noyek, Shiva, and Shloshim. Okay. Now, again, what's normally you would say, Yachid Verabba. So Amar Rabba Bar Bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yechon. That normally Kol Malkim She'atam Moitzi Yachid Mekel Verabba Machmirim Halachin Kerabim. Now we're emphasizing not only Yachid Verabim but Kula and Chumra. Guys, let's go now. Again, this is the whole question. If we're going to learn that Avelos is Midoraisa, as many Rishonim hold, at least for 1 day, so then you would be Machmir because it's a Din Doiraisa. So it's like a double whammy. It's a Doiraisa. I'm adding that according to many Rishonim, and it's a Rabim. You would paskin like the Rabbim, chutz mizu. Mizu doesn't mean this being the only exception. You know what mizu means? Laws of mourning, avelus, regarding this topic. Because that Rabbi Akiva is the mekel machmirim, halacha ki Rabbi Akiva. Why? Because the Amar Shmuel, halacha ki divrei hamekel be'evol. Says the Gemara. Let's go stories to find out what, like whom we paskin like. Rab Chanina, Asile Shmuel, the Avua, he found out that his father passed away, right? Now, I just don't have a clarity whether his father lived in Beit Chozoi, which was far away from Rab Chanina, or Rab Chanina was from Beit Chozoi. Bottom line is Rab Chanina heard about his father's passing after 30 days. And also Lekamed Rab Chizda, because he knew it's a machlokes Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim. Again, the Chachamim are Machmir, the Chachamim are Rabbim. What should I do? So Rabbi Chizda told him, Shmua Rechoika Einoy Neheges Ela Yoim Echad. Again, we paskin like Rabbi Akiva. And it was for his father, and we're going to see as the sugya will begin to be unpackaged even more, that in certain areas we are more machmir father and mother than any other relative. Doesn't matter. Avelus make. Next, another story. Rab Nasan bar Ami asa le Shmua the ime again mi beichoy zoi. The Shmua came from there. In other words, that the mother lived there. Stamit was during a time maybe that traveling was not safe. So until people came, it was like a known thing. Yeah, if something happened in Beichoy Zoi, by the time you found out, it was very late. And now he went to Rava. Now this is a big chiddush. What's the big chiddush? What did we learn today regarding the first topic? That Rava was the machmer. Rava was the, if it's Rabba and Rava, if it's Rava, right? However, Amalei, same thing. Harei Amru, Shmua, Rechoika, Einon, Noheges, Elo, Yoim, Echad, Bulvad. Okay, very nice. Two stories. The Gemara has a question on this opinion. How can you say Shmua Rechoika is only Yom Echad? It says in a Brayso, indeed, that what? That Shmua Rechoika is only one day. You found out after 30 days. There's no shloisha. There's like one day of mourning. That's only b'chamishim esei mitzvah. For the 5 people to whom or for whom you have a mitzvah to mourn, which is everyone other father than mother, as we'll see in Amud Beis. Aval al Alimai says Shiva Ushloishim. In other words, if we are now presuming that the machloikas between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim was only regarding the 5. So I get it, since there is one sheet at Rabbi Akiva that's lenient, we can be kedivrei hamekel. But father and mother, that's the thing, l'chayra, everyone says. So he says no. That this Brais is also only Yichidahi. It's the opinion of one, minority opinion, and Veloy Svidolon Kavase. Now, if it would be quoted just anonymously as it is, then you can't say Yichidah. But if you're going to find another Braisa that's going to quote this Shita in the name of one Tana, then you can argue that all the other Braisas, even though they're Stam, it's only quoting this one opinion, and the others don't agree. The Tanya. Maisa umeis aviv shel Rab Tzadok beginzak. Here, and you know when Rab Ginzak heard of it, Rab Tzadok found out 3 years later. Halachically, it doesn't make a difference, but imagine that was the world they lived in. 3 years after his father passed away, after the Holocaust, that happened very often. People found out many years later. They didn't know. There were some happy stories. People found out fakir, they're alive, but that's very rare. He found out 3 years later. Uba v'shoal. Here we have one of the cases, Elisha ben Avuya. Right, that's before. Recording it, and Uzakenim She'imoy. And Va'amru, and they told him, Nahoig Shiva Ushloishim. That's already enough of a proof. It's amazing. Even though we're quoting Uzakenim She'imoy. But the fact, verstehst, Yechidah doesn't mean one. All the elders agreed with that. That for father and mother, there's no such a concept of Shmua Rechoika. Doesn't matter. It's not a anonymous. It's not a stam b'raisa. There was Elisha ben Avuya and the elders that were with him, which implies that the other elders did not agree with it. But let's keep on reading. Now I want you to know that this is not part of the b'raisa, because actually the Gemara, for a moment, understands that the Rab Achia is Rab Chia, but we'll correct that. When the son of Rab Achia, who lived in Babel, found a way, passed away, Yashav alav shiva shloishim. Even though obviously the case must be that what happened, that he found out after 30 days.
It's not father and mother.
Not only is it not correct. It's not father and mother. That means he paskin like whom? Like the Chachamim. Don't forget, there is a sheet on the Chachamim that Taka did not differentiate. We are saying that we paskin like the Kedivri Hamekel, but some people didn't. The problem will be, again, Anab Achia, based on the presumption that this is Rab Chia. How can that be? Rav, as we know. Remember when we had this? Danny, Psachim Davdala Damadalef, the first Rashi. Rav, it's a Gemara, but Rashi explains what happened. Was the son of the brother of Rab Chia. Rav was a double nephew. In other words, Rav's tate was the half brother of Rab Chia. Rav also, was the son of the sister of Rab Chia. The brothers and sisters were not related. with each other, but they were both related to Rab Chia. And read the Rashi, the first Rashi and the Abdal Dem Sachem. He works it out. Now, where did Rav live? We know Rav lived in the Surah, even though Rav was brought up in the Holy Land. But Rav would go visit Eretz Yisrael. Rab Chia was in Eretz Yisrael. So during one of these travels, Ki Salik Lo Hassan, when Rav went up, he met his uncle, Amar Lei. So his uncle asked his nephew, Abba Kayam. Abba Kayam means, remember his name, Ivo, right? I think it was Ivo. Is your father alive? Which means, is my brother alive? And Daf Chaf Amid Beis, and this is a very big klal. We should never be the ones, never always has exceptions. Sometimes you don't have an option to share bad news. And Rav didn't want to say that he passed away. He didn't want to give him bad news. It was many years after. So the way Rav responded was, why are you asking me about my father? What, do you know what's happening with my mother? What ima kayemes? My mother's your sister. Like you're only asking about the father. What? Why don't you ask if my mother is alive? That's a smart way of giving the info without saying explicitly. And now he got nervous. So he already understood that his brother is not alive. But the fact that Rav even said, is my mother alive? What did we learn also? That you have to be careful. Rav wouldn't have said it only because the fact was she also was no longer alive. So Rab Chia jumps and he says, Oy Gavalt, is your mother alive? Is my sister alive? To which he responds, what, is my father alive? Why are you asking me about my mother? Why didn't you ask me about my father? Very sad. So Bekitza, Rab Chia found out this is a rechoika. This is for sure after 30 days, both a brother and a sister passed away. So Amalei Lishamoin, Rab Chia told his helper, like we just mentioned. That's a practice that we do nowadays. We take off our leather shoes. Help me take off my leather shoes. Now, when a person is in mourning, one of the dinim of mourning is there's an isur of rechitza. And he told him right away, and help me walk my clothing to the bathhouse. So when I take a bath, I should have fresh clothing. No, that's what he did it for a purpose. He made that statement, as the Gemara says. From here, we know 3 dinim. Din number 1 is aval asabin inas asana. Yeah, if he wouldn't, even though it was after 30 days, if there would be no dinim available, so why would he take off the shoes? Shmami no shmua rechoike inen hegas elu yom echad, and not only yom echad, but shmami no mixas hayom kekuloi. What I said about Shabbos, I take back. It doesn't work. I said Shabbos, when it's only a 1-day halacha, you can't say mixas hayom kekuloi. You're asking here, it's only 1 day, but maybe it's an abbreviated shiva. Since it's a shiva only for 1 day, okay, right. Now, so what the point is that how can we quote a story that Rabbi Achia, who found out that his son passed away, Rahman al-Atzlan, he sat Shiva and Shloishim. Here we see that that Rabbi Achia only kept for his brother and his sister, he only kept Mixas Hayoim. So the Gemara says, you're confusing 2 different Amiroyim, Rabbi Achia Lechud and Rebbe Achia Lechud. Okay. Babli Yerushalmi, right? Many Amiroyim, when you read their names in Yerushalmi, there's a letter up, a letter down. It's all the same. Not in our case. Amar Rabbi Yosi bar Ravin. Shama Shmua Keroiva Boregel. Listen to this. Listen to this. A person hears within 30 days, including the 30th day, that a relative passed away. But what did we begin the today's share? Yesterday, that on the regel doesn't cancel it. You didn't even begin Shiva, but it suspends it. To when? To after Yom Tiv. After Yom Tiv is after 30 days. What a great question. So since de facto, the person will only begin the Shiva after 30 days, could you argue, it's after 30 days, and therefore it's Shmor HaChoika, and therefore only 1 day? What's the din? Says Rabbi Yosi bar Ravin. That what? That oilaloi Yom Tiv is included in the calculating of the 30 days. And therefore, even according to the Rishonim, that there are certain nihuge avelus that have to be done on regel, you're not called a novel. You really didn't begin. Even though the acherim fulfilled their nicham avelum. You did not begin. You did not begin. This is lakula. Therefore, you are starting avelus after Yom Tiv. After Yom Tiv, it's already the choika. That's a big kula. Tana Rab Ada from Kesari in front of Rabbi Yochanan. He taught him the following brayso that he heard. That Shama Shmua Kareva B'Shabbos. Wow. Shabbos is not included in the Shiva. Shabbos doesn't suspend anything. Nevertheless, even over here, since Bifahad Esya, there's no Avelus in Shabbos. Here also, you can only count from Matzei Shabbos. If Matzei Shabbos is already after 30 days, also, even here, Gavaldik, Einoi Noyig Elo Yoim Echad. Wow. No question. Now, Chevre, Kriya is like a standalone din. Not only is Kriya not part of Avelus, but actually Kriya is done before a person is an oven. It used to be Kriya was done by the passing. It used to be done that those who were present during the passing toward Kriya, and from Mekama Sibois, it became common practice that Kriya is done before the burial, during the burial, before Avelus. So let's now figure out what we do with Kriya. In other words, when you have a Shmuam, what are you telling me? That there's only one day of mourning? Maybe there's not even Shloisha. So do you have to do Kriya? Rav Mani says, Einoi Koireya. Rab Chanina says, yes, Koireya. Amalei Rav Mani le Rab Chanina, that I say Einoi Koireya. Hainu Doloika Avelu Shiva. In other words, he's saying that Kriya can only be fulfilled when there is the din of 7 days. But Elolididach, that you hold that even by Yeshmuar Choika, Koireya, Frekter, Kriya, Beloi, Shiva, Mi Iker. Now the Gemara, instead of answering the question, is going to ask the questionnaire. Veloi? What do you mean? The premise is so wrong. You shouldn't have even said it. I'll prove to you that Kriya is not intimately linked with 7 days. Vehatanya. Or the other version will be that Vetane Isi, because Isi, Avodah Rab Zeda is an Amoira. That is that Isi had the following brayso. We're going to quote a brayso, or the Amri law that the brother of Rab Zeda taught the following brayso in front of Rab Zeda. That what says in the brayso, Misha ein loy chaluk likraya. If a person doesn't have a garment to tear, not that people go around without garments. That means if someone is wearing a borrowed garment, I'm not allowed to be mazik something that doesn't belong to me. No, it's when the person heard that there is a passing, he did not have a garment to tear, his garment. If he got his own garments back during the Shiva, not during the burial, anytime during Shiva, then Koireya. So that's the beginning. By the way, this sounds great. This sounds clearly that when you don't have Shiva, right, you don't do Kriya. But as he's quoting this brayso, Rab Zeda made a correction. Rab Zeda says, yeah, I went to Cheder and I already learned this brayso, but there's another shtickle that changes everything. On it, Rab Zeda Basrein, he says, only b'chamisha mesei mitzvah, only for the 5 of the 7 that we'll enumerate soon. No matter when you found out, even though no matter when you got your own garments, even after Shiva, you have to tear. Now hold on. You understand? So the premise, he's asking, if there's no Shiva, how can there be Kriya? Yeah, you have a brayso. I know that the brayso is only speaking about Avav Lima. It doesn't matter. But you see the concept that Kriya doesn't have to be linked to Shiva. So the Gemara answers, no, that doesn't prove anything. And this really will be the base of the next sugya. Chavre, as we'll see in a moment, now concerning Kriya and soon regarding Avelus. Not to confuse, there are halachos of Avelus that I'm mechuyev to keep. And then as we will see, there are certain times that people will practice the laws of Avelus, not because they are Avelim, but to give honor. We are accepting the kasha that Kriya is connected to Shiva. The fact that you found one place in the Ganso Torah Shabal Peh, Sabraisa, that only Rab Zeda remembered, that for the father and the mother you will rip your garments after Shiva, that's not the halacha of Kriya. That's called, since this person didn't do Kriya for his father or his mother, not Hilchos Kriya, but do kriya. To give them more honor. It's a way you're machabed them. Interesting concept. So remember this. So there's halachas that I'm mechuyev, and then there's certain times that I'll do the same deed. But it's not mitzad, I'm mechuyev to do it, but that's the way I'm going to show kavod. Here, okay, so that closes the question. In other words, you don't find hilchos kriya when there's no shiva. Nukud. And now let's begin. Tanach Rabbanan. Who are the people for whom we mourn? So I will keep on quoting. By the way, I keep on getting the seder wrong. The seder you begin with your spouse, as we tell you Shabbat Peh, which is spouse. All right, if we're speaking to a man, for a wife, father, mother, son and daughter, brother, sister. But this is not as simple as it sounds, because when it comes to brother and sister, as we have in many other areas in halacha, you have to clarify. Obviously, if it's brother, both paternally and maternally, there's nothing to talk about. But we'll see that biblical mourning is for paternal. Biblical, and even if the sister is paternally a sister from the Zalbatate, if she's already married, biblically you don't have to mourn for her. So it's more midrabanan you do. Midrabanan even for maternal. Let's go read it inside. Tanach Rabbanan. Kol ha'amur beparshas kohanim. In Parshas Emor, where the Torah is speaking to us about the unique kedusha of kohanim, which is also expressed by the fact that they are not allowed to contaminate themselves to a corpse unless it's a meis mitzvah. But then the Torah speaks out the 7 people to whom a kohen is allowed to, and therefore there's a mitzvah. There's a mitzvah to be occupied in the burial of one's relatives. So whoever are the people, shekoyin metamolahen, these are clear psukim, even though the Torah uses the word she'eroi, and she'eroi is a word that you have to know what Rashi says. She'eroi means wife. Okay, that avel misabel aleihem, and let's go through the seder. Ishtoi, and by the way, ishtoi doesn't mean only wife. We're speaking to men, husband also. Okay, aviv ve'imai. Let me touch echav, paternal. Just add that word in here. If not, you'll get tripped up in a moment. Va'achoisoi, not only does she have to be your paternal, means you can have a maternal sister, you're not mechoyev to mourn, midoiraisa. Even if it's a paternal sister, not married. And benoi ubitoi. Now, it's amazing this just to be medayik in the seder. Medayik in the seder, I'm just saying that it's not who came on the scene first. Like, why is son and daughter after brother and sister? You can say chronologically, a person has siblings normally before they have a son and a daughter. Not always, but your wife came on the scene later. So, it's interesting. You're going to say closest? So you're saying that a person is closer to the least closest benoy ubitoi?
Well, wife you have to put first. If you don't put wife first, you can get in trouble.
Okay, so you have to see the Seder HaPasuk. But the question is also on the Seder in the Chumash.
Wife is like your other half.
Americana Yidden. Okay, Seder, good. I'm not debating with you. I'm being recorded. And all I'm asking is that why the son and daughter come after brother and sister? And we will actually see soon in the Gemara Sfaris, Shitos in the Rishonim, that for parents, and God forbid, son and daughter, there might be more chumras, more than anyone else.
Rabbi,
Yes.
maybe you can suggest that that achiv ve'achoto are older than bno ve'bito and ve'adat bnei zaken.
No. First of all, love, big love dafka. Why are they older? You have many ones that are younger. And don't say v'hadarta p'nei zaken. If you can add, if it's the eldest brother, kabed eis es l'rabbeis achiv hagadol. That you can say. Anyways, good. Now, that's midorais. Oisifu aleihem. The chachamim added. It's good to be it's good. Machayim. I'm machayim, not to God forbid be in this position, but to learn about it, learning Torah. That they added. Achiv means even only a maternal brother. Sister, what are we adding? The achoisoi hapsula me'imoi. Even a virgin sister, if it's only maternal, again, biblically, you don't have to mourn. Midrabanan, you have to mourn. And the sister who's married, bein ma'aviv, bein me'imoi, which both of these, midoiraisa, there's no shiur for mourning, midrabanan, you have to mourn. Right, Atkan, we're good. At least we're not getting confused because People know, the 7, we're still up to 7. Listen to these shocking words. We're going to add many more people, midrabanan. We'll see what the halach is. Says the Rabbi Akiva, says the Braisa, ucheshem shemisabel aleihem. Just like one has to mourn for the above 7, kach misabel al shniyim shalohem. Wow, shniyim, this is a good intro to Yevamos, calls secondary relations. What do we mean by secondary? Let's go like this. Let's go to Reuven. So Reuven has to sit shiva, has to mourn by the passing of Yaakov. Yaakov is the immediate relative of Reuven. What happens if Yaakov is alive? Or not? But Yitzchak passes away. Says Rabbi Akiva that any one of the immediate relatives of any of Reuven's immediate relatives, midrabanan, Reuven has to sit shiva for. Has to be Mesabel.
Regardless of whether Yaakov is alive or not.
Regardless whether Yaakov is alive or not. Yechap. Now, guys, we don't practice. That adds so much. That adds so much. In other words, anyone, but the 7 immediate relatives, the immediate of the immediate, you also have to mourn for. That's called Shniyim. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, I agree that sometimes midrabanan you add the immediate of the immediate, but only ella al ben benoy va'al avi aviv. See here, not brother, sister, not even wife. Now, it doesn't mean only father of father. It can mean mother of mother or mother of father. It means going up and going down. Going up and going down. Midrabanan. But you're mechuyev to
one level, right?
What?
Just one level, right?
Just one level.
So like a grandfather or a grandson?
Like a grandfather or a grandson. Grandmother, granddaughter. Chachamim oimrim. Now the Chachamim are not Rabbi Akiva. The Chachamim oimrim kol shemisabel olav misabel imoy. That means, again, let's go wife. That if a person has to mourn for his wife when she's in mourning, if she's in mourning, you have to mourn. It mamish sounds like Rabbi Akiva, but here's the key word. He says misabel imoy. What does imoy mean? Imoy means you only have to practice mourning when you are in their presence, which means, like we mentioned before, the last topic in the sugya, like kriya l'chavoid. You're not mechuyev, but the way you show them covered, any one of one's 7 close relatives, is that if they are mourning, when you are with them, you mourn with them. How much do you have to do? Let's leave it according to the Rishonim, everything. Take off your shoes, you sit on a low stool. We don't do this. We'll get there in a moment.
That would exclude if they're Shmo Rechoka or if they're already passed away?
Everything. If when you are with them. Now, the Chachamim sounds like Tanach is Rabbi Akiva. Says the Gemara, no. Ika benai, the Chachamim say the words imoy. Imi means, according to the Chachamim, only when they are in your house. Actually, there's a whole machlekes in the Shonim, in the house or in the room. Many people say imoy babayis means in front of you. A story just to clarify. Ki hada amar le Rav to Rab Chia berei. Likewise, Rav Huna told Rabba his son. Both of them had a spouse that was sitting shiva. So they told him, Ba'apa, while you are in her presence, Ba'apa means when you are in her face, then Nahoig Avelusa. Guys, these words are very important. Not that you're mechuyev to mourn. You should behave like a mourner. But Beloy Apa, when you are not in her presence, Loy Tinoig Avelusa. In other words, this is called Avelus out of respect. Say covet means respect, and not because you're obligated. Why is that so important? Who cares? If midrabanan, you have to respect her, I'll tell you who cares. And that's how it evolved to what we do today. If Reuven is mechuyev to do the laws of mourning, no one can free him from it. But if Reuven, who married Rachel lost her father. So Reuven, Ba'apa has to be noyeg avelus. What happens if Rachel tells her husband, you're doing it for my covet, ich bin moichel the covet. I don't need for you to be machabed me by taking off your shoes. She has the right to be moichel on her covet. Not only does she have the right to be moichel on her covet, but that's how it evolved, that we presume, a halachic presumption, that no one wants for their close relatives to join them in the morning on this level. They're moichel, not because they said so. Halacha says now we make that presumption. That's why. That's how it evolved. Because we don't paskin like Rebbe Akiva, we paskin like the Chachamim. Not because Chachamim is the Rambam, because we're noig kula. It's only nihug. By nihug avelus, it's shaykh to be moichel. When it's not nihug, let's say there's a father. Father's about to pass away. He tells his sons, "Ich bin moichel de shiva." Can't do that. It's not his to be moichel. If a child who's mechuyev to mourn has to mourn. If it's only to give them cover, then they can be moichel. Okay, says the Gemara story. Mar Ukva Shachiv Le Bar Chamua, the son of his father-in-law, or in English, his brother-in-law, right, passed away. The brother-in-law meaning his wife's brother, which means that his wife was sitting shiva. Now, the wife is not sitting shiva for her father. That was the shniyim. The wife is sitting shiva for her brother. So, Savar lemesav alei shiva ushloishim. He felt initially, he says that maybe I have to mamish join her for the whole thing, for shiva and for shloishim. So, all Rav Huna legabei, and he sees him sitting down in the morning, no shoes, sitting on the ground. So, Ashkechei and Amalei, so Rav Huna tells Mar Ukva, Sudani yasa ba yisla mechal. But you want to get the Sudas Havra'ah. Sudas Havra'ah is a halacha that is done nowadays, which is that after the burial, it's very important that the first Su'udah, that's the way we paskin. Others held all of the meals of that day should dafka not be bought from the pocket of the Avelim. It should be bought by others. The word Havra'ah is from Brius. And Nachlar's Minhagim, it's a very simple meal. It's mamish the way we eat before our Tisha B'Av. It's bread and eggs. And we don't add ashes before the Churban Habayis, but not, since we are not the biggest tzaddikim, so we have to make the Churban Habayis more close to us, so we add the ash. When a person, Rahman al-Islam, just came back from a burial, it's good and bitter. I'm saying yeah. Okay, so what you want, in other words, you don't have to mourn. What you want to have those eggs. First of all, you're not mechuyev. And it's only a kavod. And even the kavod, it's only if she is sitting shiva for her father and her mother. Only if it's for your father-in-law and mother-in-law. Hence, again, the third time today that we differentiate between father and mother and everyone else. And halacha does differentiate, not over here. And we said that nowadays no one does any kavod. But father and mother, you have dinam of avelus for 12 months. For everyone else, all of the dinam of avelus ends after shloishim. Okay, weiter. The Tanya, if someone's father-in-law or mother-in-law, God forbid, passed away. So first of all, a man then cannot tell his wife that you should put on your eye makeup and put on your poisekas, your rouge. Why? Because not only is she mourning, I got a few smiles here, I don't know why, but Ella, he has to mourn with her. What do you mean she should? He has to overturn his beds. He has to be noyeg avelus. Again, the words are noyeg. It's the more lenient, but he has to be noyeg. She lost her father-in-law or her mother-in-law. No, it's his father, right? So when a person is in mourning, one of the dinim of mourning is you can't put on makeup. So she cannot put on makeup. Why? Because that's called shniyim. Her immediate relative, her husband, is sitting shiva for his father or mother. Okay, so that's good. So again, the proof from this Baraisa, my friends, is that since the example that the Baraisa gave was only where there was father and mother, so therefore all of that is why Mar Ukva was told, your wife is sitting shiva for her brother. There's no din of kavod ishtoi. The Tanya idach afal pisha amru ein reshoy loch v'sishte liyos kerchelos liyos besekes, as we learned above. But the emes amru moizeges lehakois. She continues to do to fulfill her obligations of a spouse, to fill them, to dilute the cup. Umitzas loimita. Now this is a problem. You know what mitzas mita means? She makes the bed. If the man is mechuyev to do kfiyas hamita, if he has to overturn his bed, it's not shaykh to do matzas loimita. That's a problem. Same thing with rechitza. If a man l'chvoy dishtoi, here you can argue he can wash it, not the apple, but the bed, there's no bed. So kashin adodi, let's go mainly to the bed. Answers the Gemara, Elav shmamino, that you must say that. Kan, the first brayse is b'chaviv v'chamoisei. That is where she cannot make his bed. You know why? Because since she is mourning for her father or for her mother, he has to overturn his bed. There is no bed for her to make. Kan is when she is mourning for her other 5 relatives, including the case of Maruka, for her brother. Shmamino, beautiful. Tanya nami hachi. Says the Gemara story, Ameimar shchiv le barberei. Ameimer lost a grandson, means Ameimer's son lost a son. What happened? Now we're learning a new din. Because the Chevra de Braisa that we introduced about the concept of Shniim by Avelus, the Braisa was speaking about Avelus. We just learned now about Kriya. Kriya is lav dafka connected to Avelus. At kedekach, the machlokes that we had above. So here, my same question: does one have to rent Kriya for the Shniim? What did Ameimer do? Kora ilove. Yes, Ameimer felt that since his son has to rip Kriya, he has to rip Kriya. But what happened? He then discovered that he's not mechuyev to rip Kriya. He only does Kriya l'chvoid his son. You only do that in the presence of the son. So he realized that his first Kriya was not good. It's amazing how when he found out a kula, it brought upon him a chumrah. In other words, the fact that you only have to be noyeg avelus ba'apa, that sounds like a leniency. In our case, it was a chumrah because the kriya that he did wasn't good enough, the second to last line. So when his son came, kara ba'api. And that's the Tosfos over here. Look inside the last Tosfos. Again, Tosfos asked, why the tema? He already did kriya. So the Gemara says, yes, the shemola ashmu'inan, the ba'ape noyeg avelus. No, in other words, he wanted to show his son saw that his garment is rent, but he wanted to make it clear that this whole shniim is not like Rabbi Akiva. It's only like the Chachamim. It's a nihud. But hold on. You know what happened? When he rent his garments the second time, he was sitting. There's another din. Kriya has to be done standing. Itkar, he realized that he was meyushav, and meyushav doesn't go on the first. I don't even care if he was standing by the first. He was sitting by the second. Now we're opening up the next topic. So what happened was, he stood up and he rent for the third time. And how do you know that Kriya has to be Muhammad? Amalei Rav Ashila Meimar. You tore the third. I got the second, but what's the third? Kriya the Muhammad minalan. So he says that from Iyuv, when it says that when Iyuv found out the Nebuch that his children passed away. So it says Vayakam Iyuv Vayikras Meiloi. He stood up and he tore his coat. Daf Chaf Aleph. So the Gemara says, what, standing up is a raya that you have to do at Mu'umad when it says Elama Atom and Parshas Kiseitze, that part of the chalitza is, it says Va'amad Va'amar, that the man, the brother-in-law, stands up, right? Va'amad, and he says he will arise and say Lechafatzti Lekachta, etc. So Hachinami, that since the Torah uses the words Va'amad Va'amar, it's ma'akev, like by kriya. It's not true. I don't care in what position the husband is in during the chalitza, it's valid. So the Gemara gives a gavaldik answer. Amalei, over there in Parshas Kiseitze, right? It doesn't say vayamoid, vayomer. It doesn't say he will arise. No, it says va'amad va'amad. Vayamid means he should arise. If the Torah says he should get up, then you have a good deal. Doesn't say that. What does it say? Va'amad, and he will arise. Says it explains the Gemara. That's just a matter of speech. Here, when the Torah is recording a one-time event, why would the Torah record that Iyuv stood up? Unless the Torah is trying to tell you that you have to stand up for Vayikra. You understand? So that's a Gavaldik rule. A one-time event, skip a detail that's not essential. Chalitza is not about a story, it's telling you a din. If it's telling you a din, then if the Torah would have meant to teach you that you must do chalitza standing, it would have said vaya amoid, which means he should arise. If you take out the word he should, then it's just a matter of speaking.
When we need the word ba'amad at all by chalitza,
It's a matter of speech.
that means not necessarily.
Not necessarily that he has to stand. No, it's the way people do it when they're standing. That's the way normally it's done. It has to be an interaction, and she has to with all of the details that we'll learn in Sanhedrin in Yavamas about chalitza. We'll stop over here to be continued more minayin, the source of kriyah.
Good Shabbos.
Good job.
Halachas, Rabbi, we don't do this avelis for a son's son or a father.
I just explained. It's 2 steps. Step number 1 is Danny, because we paskin that it's only kvoid. Kvoid means I'm not mechuyev, it's only for the honor. And since it's done for the honor, if they are moichel, you don't have to do anything. And now the halachic presumption is that they're moichel. They don't want to see their relatives having to do all of these steps. I'm saying this because theoretically, if they say, I am not moichel, then in their presence, you would have to be noyeg dini avelis. Okay, Chavra? Just to speak out that since we had a passing over here, could be I'm going to go to the burial of Tzvika's mother. If that's going to happen, we'll figure out. I'll be there very short if I can make it, but then we'll figure out exactly how to make up